Today we're going to read and comment on a short lecture by Neville Goddard named Fundamentals. I'm not actually sure it's a lecture, but it was taken somewhere from a book maybe, I'm not sure. But anyway, let's call it a lecture because labels don't matter that much. Before I start, thank you so much for sharing, liking, commenting and subscribing, and also hitting the bell button. I appreciate it. It helps my channel grow a lot and I love the support. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Fundamentals. Neville Goddard, author of The Power of Awareness. With so vast a subject, it is indeed a difficult task to summarize in a few hundred words what I consider the most basic ideas on which those who seek a true understanding of metaphysics should now concentrate. I shall do what I can in the shape of three fundamentals. These fundamentals are self-observation, definition of aim, and detachment. The purpose of true metaphysics is to bring about a rebirth or radical psychological change in the individual. Such a change cannot take place until the individual first discovers the self that he would change. This discovery can be made only through an uncritical observation of its reactions to life. The sum total of these reactions defines the individual states of consciousness, and it is the individual states of consciousness that attracts the situation and circumstances of his life. So the starting point of true metaphysics on its practical side is self-observation. In order to discover one's reactions to life, reactions that form one's secret self, the cause of the phenomena of life. With Emerson, I accept the fact that man surrounds himself with the true image of himself. What we are, then only can we see. There is a definite connection between what is outer and what is inner in man, and it is ever our inner states that attract our outer life. Therefore, the individual must always start with himself. It is oneself that must be changed. Man, in his blindness, is quite satisfied with himself, but heartily dislikes the circumstances and situations of his life. He feels this way, not knowing that the cause of his displeasure lies not in the condition nor the person with whom he is displeased, but in the very self he likes so much. Not realizing that he surrounds himself with the true image of himself, and what he is, that only can he see. He is shocked when he discovers that he had always been his own deceitfulness that made him suspicious of others. Self-observation would reveal this deceitful one in all of us, and this one must be accepted before there can be any transformation of ourselves. At this moment, try to notice your inner state. To what thoughts are you consenting? With what feelings are you identified? You must be ever careful with what you are within yourself. Most of it think that we are kind and loving, generous and tolerant, forgiving and noble. But an uncritical observation of our reactions to life will reveal a self that is not at all kind and loving, generous and tolerant, forgiving and noble. And it is self that we must first accept and set about to change. Rebirth depends on inner work on oneself. No one can be reborn without changing this self. Anytime that an entirely new set of reactions enters into a person's life, a change of consciousness has taken place, a spiritual rebirth has occurred. Having discovered through an uncritical observation of your reactions to life a self that must be changed, you must now formulate an aim. That is, you must define the one you would like to be instead of the one you truly are in secret. With this aim clearly defined, you must throughout your conscious waking day notice your every reaction in regard to this aim. The reason for this is that everyone lives in a definite state of consciousness, which state of consciousness we have already described as the sum total of his reactions to life. Therefore, In defining a name, you are defining a state of consciousness, which, like all states of consciousness, must have its reactions to life. For example, if a rumor of an idle remark could cause an anxious reaction in one person and no reaction in another, this is positive proof that the two people are living in two different states of consciousness. If you define your aim as a noble, generous, secure, kindly individual, knowing that all things are states of consciousness, you can easily tell whether you are faithful to your aim in life by watching your reactions to the daily events of life. If you are faithful to your ideal, your reactions will conform to your aim, for you will be identified with your aim and therefore will be stinking from your aim. If your reactions are not in harmony with your ideal, it is a sure sign that you are separated from your ideal and are only thinking of it. Assume that you are the loving one you want to be and notice your reactions throughout the day in regard to that assumption, for your reactions will tell you the state from which you are operating. This is where the third fundamental, detachment, enters in. Having discovered that everything is a state of consciousness made visible, and having defined that particular state which we want to make visible, we now set about the task of entering such a state. For we must move psychologically from where we are to where we desire to be. The purpose of practicing detachment is to separate us from our present reactions to life and attach us to our aim in life. This inner separation must be developed in practice. At first, we seem to have no power to separate ourselves from undesirable inner states, simply because we have always taken every mood, every reaction as natural and have become identified with them. When we have no idea that our reactions are only states of consciousness from which it is possible to separate ourselves, we go round and round in the same circle of problems, not seeing them as inner states but as outer situations. We practice detachment, our inner separation, that we may escape from the circle of our habitual reactions to life. That is why we must formulate an aim and constantly notice ourselves in regard to that aim. This teaching begins with self-observation. Secondly, it asks, what do you want? And then it teaches detachment from all negative states and the attachment to your aim. This last state, attachment to your aim, is accomplished by frequently assuming the feeling of your wish to fulfill. We must practice separating ourselves from our negative moods and thoughts in the midst of all the troubles and disasters of daily life. No one can be different from what he is now unless he begins to separate himself from his present reactions and to identify himself with his aim. Detachment from negative states and assumption of the wish fulfilled must be practiced in the midst of all the blessings of cursings of life. The way of true metaphysics lies in the midst of all that is going on in life. We must constantly practice self-observation, thinking from our aim, and detachment from negative moods and thoughts if we would be doers of truth instead of mere hearers and haters. Practice these three fundamentals and you will rise to higher and higher levels of consciousness. Remember, always it is your state of consciousness that attracts your life. Start climbing. Neville Goddard. Wow, that was a powerful, I'm fired up. This was a really good, although short, really amazing lecture. Here's my quick summary and commentary. The understanding of metaphysics can be explained by the fundamentals, which are self-observation, definition of aim, and detachment. The first one discusses what we should observe ourselves first so we can find that all the things we dislike stems from us. After self-observation, the want to change will emerge. That is when we should define what we aim to be. Knowing what we desire, detaching from the previous self will follow. Imagining what you want and having faith in it will make it harden into fact. If you define your aim as a noble, generous, secure, kindly individual, knowing that all things are state of consciousness, you can easily tell whether you are faithful to your aim in life by watching your reactions to the daily events of life. If you are faithful to your ideal, your reaction will conform to your aim, for you will be identified with your aim and therefore will be thinking from your aim. If your reactions are not in harmony with your ideal, it is a sure sign that you are separated from your ideal and are only thinking of it, not from it. Assume that you are the loving one you want to be, and notice your reaction throughout the day in regards to that assumption. For your reaction will tell you the state from which you are operating. This is where the third fundamental, detachment, enters in. Having discovered that everything is a state of consciousness made visible, and having defined a particular state which we want to make visible, we now set about the task of entering such a state, for we must move psychologically from where we are to where we desire to be. So, pretty much in this lecture, it's very condensed, but it's deep, and you have everything you want. And as Neville Goddard said, and I think he did a very good job, because he said it was not an easy task to put his fundamentals into a few hundred words, but he did a great job. And there's a few things we need to unpack. It is ignoring your reality. By detaching, it means ignoring your current reality, which means that you react only positively to things that are in alignment with your fulfilled desire. The things that would be triggering, or the things that seemingly, because that's a talk for another day, but don't forget the bridge of event can lead you to seemingly bad things for a higher purpose, a stepping stone, so to speak, if you will. So remember that as well. But I digress, but it's important to note. So when things, for example, when you manifesting an SP, when you manifesting money, whatever the case may be, and the things that you check your bank account and there's still no money, or you manifesting an SP and this SP has blocked you, for example, those things that generally can tend to be triggering should be ignored. And that's what Neville Goddard means when he means to be detached. Being detached is being detached from the reality that does not, the reality that triggers, that might trigger negative states of mind and negative thoughts. So by detaching from them and ignoring it, and by reaffirming and being persistent in your assumption and reaffirming who you really are, your reactions will be different. Because when you frequently, as he prescribed, when you frequently assume who you want to be and think from it, not think of it, that's the whole difference. You think of it frequently. If you think about wealth and think about being wealthy, this is thinking of it. When you think as I am wealthy, I'm prosperous, etc., etc., you're thinking from it. And by assuming more and more of this, it would be much easier to not react negatively and stay in the positive reaction and be detached from anything and everything that is negative. So that's why Neville Goddard is always talking about being a guardian of your thoughts. Always, he said to ever be conscious of what is happening in your mind. And yes, it can be a daunting task, I'm not gonna lie, but it is what it is, and it gets better and better over time. And like anything, whenever you start something worthwhile and something as grandiose as being pretty much in control, quote unquote, of your mind, it's obviously gonna take some time. Regardless of where you start, you might be more advanced, less advanced, it doesn't matter. When you start, you start. You're cultivating your mind. You changing yourself, literally, you're changing your state of consciousness. That's why every day can seem so different. You might be doing the same thing, but in your mind, when you're working on your mind, every day is different. It's like you own it. You might be doing everything similarly in your day-to-day. I mean, talking about the outside life. You might be seeing the same people, blah blah, etc. But when you start this process, you will see that it's like a roller coaster almost that happens in your mind, and you'll see that every day is different, and you're getting better and better through ups and downs. Yes, but you're getting better. That's why he always, that Neville Goddard puts such an emphasis on climbing and getting higher and higher in your consciousness, and that's the way it is. Continue to, of course, like self-observation. Observe yourself, observe your reaction. That will tell you a lot. And once you have observed, know what you want. So you have observed and you have now got all the negative stuff that you don't want. So from the self-observation, when you don't know what you don't want, Abraham Hicks calls this the contrast. You automatically in your mind know what you want. You can write it down, you can affirm it, whatever the case might be, you can visualize it. This is of your own choosing. And live more so in this state than in the negative state. And more you will live more and more in the state of your wish fulfilled. And you will live less in those negative triggers, in the negative emotion, in the negative thoughts. It doesn't mean that you have to do it all day, every day, but do it frequently, effortlessly. And at the beginning, it might be a bit tough. Yes, it might sound unnatural. It's normal. Like if you go tomorrow, if you have never done Thai boxing, for example, and you have never done it before, yes, you're gonna feel awkward, but do it for a few months and you'll see, you'll be very natural. And I'm a Thai boxing enthusiast, so I know what I'm talking about. I see those people who were clumsy at the beginning, after a few months are hitting the pads. I'm not saying they'll be great fighters after a few months, that's not what I'm saying, but the goal is not necessarily perfection there. So what I'm trying to say, like the example, the analogy of Thai boxing, like at the beginning they can barely throw a punch, barely throw a kick, and even the most awkward, clumsy people I see, after a couple months, they look very smooth on the bag, on the pads, even inspiring. So don't worry about the time component. Just every day, just wake up and do your best to do, and be patient. And by being patient, I say, be kind to yourself and be kind in your perseverance. That's very important. So anyway, I think it's enough for now. I hope you guys like it. Thank you for tuning in and staying till the end, and I will see you very soon. And also, my information is in the description box below, my coaching information, my books. If you want to leave some questions in the comments, please feel free. If you want more specific coaching, you can just book me, whatever. Anyway, sorry. I'm feeling a bit tired. I hope you liked it, and thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon.